Steve, this is a fascinating alternate history, alternate archaeology, forbidden archaeology is a subject I love. You know me, I'm a history nerd and thoroughly enjoyed the True Legends expedition to Rome and Sardinia. If anything, you and Tim Alberino undersold what we saw on the island of Sardinia. So, the Egyptian presence in the Americas, the Egyptians made it here to North America?
Well, they absolutely did, and not only did they come to the Americas, they pretty much circumnavigated the entire Pacific Rim. They, under Ptolemy III, they sent out a flotilla, a massive flotilla of Egyptian ships. Now, it's interesting because the navigator Maui, from which the island Maui is named, had a mathematical device that they knew the difference between the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere, and they were able to leave this mark on the caves, for instance, in Indonesia, in South America, and in the United States. They were gone for years and years. By the way, they never returned back to Egypt. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating is a former prime minister of Egypt named Nubar Pasha. Nubar Pasha, at the same time that John Wesley Powell is taking over the reins of the Smithsonian, made the request to the Smithsonian and the U.S. government that all Egyptian artifacts be returned to Egypt or destroyed. Now, he was, I think, a 3-term president. So Tom Horn, Skywatch TV, and Gen 6, we went to the desert Southwest for our former Holocaust of Giants. We went to hear the legends and the stories of not only stargates, but also the presence of the ancient ones in the Four Corners region of Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Mm-hmm. So the thing is that we're dealing with now the reality, Derek, of that illustration. You named it so, you defined it so perfectly, that in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Ark of the Covenant is stored, I have a statement. All history has been covered up and covered over. So, Tom, lay out, if you will, just how we were trying to get some Smithsonian, and we tried. We did everything we could, and now it sounds like we got one.
Yeah, it actually started at one of our conferences a couple of years ago, and a man came up and introduced himself to me, said that he had read the book On the Path of the Immortals, and that he could possibly open doors for us, for me and you, to be able to go into the Four Corners area and meet with some of the tribal leaders, and we did. He was able to do that, and he also talked with one of the retired curators from the Smithsonian, a guy that's evidently legendary among their leaders there. He's in his 80s now, so, when you get into your 80s, you don't care what nobody thinks, because what can they do? Kill you? You're going to die anyway. So this guy told him that he agreed that the time had come to kind of peel back some of the onion layers and discuss what is stored in these numerous Smithsonian-owned warehouses that are huge warehouses. There's literally millions and millions of antiquated objects that have been collected, probably from around the world, but especially here in early America, where they're digging up the Indian mounds. They're finding what is reported in numerous newspapers in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, of very tall humans, right? 12 foot tall, some of them almost as much as 20 foot tall, a lot of 8, 9, and 10 foot tall. And where did those bones go? Well, everybody knows they were spirited away to the Smithsonian. The question is, why were they interested? And some people believe that the Powell doctrine is all about trying to control the creation narrative. In other words, that if you find the bones of the giants, that doesn't point to evolution. That actually points to the story in the Bible, that there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. But there could be other reasons, why they would want to hide those bones away. Some of the stuff we're learning now in technology about how far back they can trace the genetic makeup just through the use of bones alone. So what is it that they're trying to do? That's a pretty big question. And that's kind of where your new documentary picks up on some of those themes, except that you were able to accomplish something nobody's done until now. And that is somebody who would know what's actually stored away in these warehouses.
One of the things, Derek, Tom, and the entire audience is that we tried to do it our way, yet a man listened. He listened to our conference last year. Isn't this how? This is so cool. Listen, I can't do backflips. This is a backflip moment. And he said, I heard you guys talking. He said, the Lord prompted me. He said, you need to get a hold of Steve and tell him what you know. His words, not mine. Very humble man, but very well connected. And by the way, I was able to check out his bona fides. He went overboard, and in the film we had to obscure his face and obscure his voice because, you know, very, very well known, very well connected. I mean, so well connected that I have to do my best not to give it away. But he talked about being taken to the Smithsonian to verify the requests of Dr. Troy Payway and his family, that Dr. Troy Payway, one of the most famous geologists in the history of the United States. By the way, he was world famous for permafrost and everything. And he was allowed access to certain areas of the Grand Canyon. Well, upon his death, Dr. Payway's brain was to be, he wanted it in a vat of whatever formaldehyde or some kind of a fix next to John Wesley Powell's brain. So in addition to this friend going to validate that and verify the family, you know, that was like 20 years ago after the death of Dr. Payway, he was given a tour of all the objects that they have denied, the Smithsonian has denied all these years. Egyptian artifacts, the presence of giants, up to 21 feet, Tom. He was told that specifically. He was only shown the bones of some 9-footers. Well, I'd be happy with that. But the point is that his eyewitness testimony of Egyptian mummies, of Egyptian artifacts, and because he traveled as a child to, like, he traveled the world, had been to the Louvre, he'd been to the British Museum, he knew what Egyptian artifacts were, and even the gentleman that was giving him the tour of the Smithsonian. Now listen, let me set this up. It's a giant warehouse, one of many, that's out of the outskirts of Washington, D.C., It's 4 levels down, about 100 yards long, with each level 100 yards long, and then annexes the equivalent going off, kind of like a starfish. And they were taken down to the 4th level. You have to have security clearances, and they have flash arresters on all the switches because everything there is formaldehyde or volatile. You know, everything is ready, a flash point. He goes into great detail, and in the video, he established something that is absolutely beyond, in my opinion, amazing, and that is the fact that there were scientists in there extracting DNA, you know, those 3 important letters of the alphabet, from an Egyptian mummy. Well, we know where that's going. And so, Tom, it's interesting because it took Branson last year to act as a springboard for somebody to come forward. And Derek, I find you made a statement, 80, you know, you don't care what they say. I should have waited until 80. I adopted that plan too early in my life. But the point is that we are now at this critical juncture, where so much, Derek, like when you were, you know, in Sardinia, and the overwhelming evidence of giants and all this. So why is this relevant in biblical time, or how is this even relevant?
Well, that's a key question.
Yeah, the key question is because Jesus told us specifically that there's nothing that's been hidden that isn't going to be made known or be revealed, you know? And also because it's time for God to set the record straight. You know, we've had, in my opinion, the last 6,000 years of distorted history with, you know, researchers and investigators tapping into, if you will, bits and pieces. But now, Tom, I think largely through your efforts, through my efforts, through all of our efforts, and we're not the only 2 guys, but what I'm saying is this, we have been directed. I've said this, Derek, and I think I've said it on this program once or twice. I believe twice. The thing is, Tom's been on, we're both on this engine of truth. We're going, he's on one rail, we're on another rail, and I'm on another rail, and we end up together in the desert Southwest. And now we end up in the transhumanism moment. That just shows me something. God does not do anything on a singular basis. And the multitude of witnesses, the multitude of evidence, the overwhelming evidence, and now, you think about it, just through the modern molecular technology and the understanding of genetics, could people even understand this, okay? They just dismiss it. And Derek, that's a question I get. I literally get emails saying, well, how is this relevant to salvation? Mm-hmm. For this purpose, Jesus Christ was manifested that he might destroy the works of the evil one. And people don't understand the hybridization of everything. As you read your ancient history, and as Tom and we talk about all this stuff, everything has been hybridized. And if they had their way, they'd hybridize us out of existence. Yet, God will still have the elect. And the elect are those who give their hearts to Jesus Christ, that he'll keep from deception. But remember, Jesus' words were, "See, be not deceived." So the greatest deception in the world. And how does this all, it all ties in to the works you've done on the Vatican and the great cover-up in history.